debt consolidation and the debt settlement. Can you help us understand a little bit what is the difference between one and the other? Welcome to the Daily Crossing. Today we are excited to have a conversation with people that are doing a phenomenal job out there, talking about a topic that going into the holidays is truly becoming a topic of concern. Absolutely a very good friend. Let me introduce him right away. This is somebody that we know now for a number of years. Somebody whose expertise has managed to already help over 1 billion people dealing with this very topic that we're going to be discussing today, which is, families that are drowning in debt. As we're getting close to the holidays, there's a number of things that people are becoming concerned. I am extremely grateful to have you here with us today. Armen Tatiyants is one of the main relationships that we always had when it came to this conversation. A key player for a company that became a great partner to PHP, and PHP agency is it's a company that my family actually co-owns an agency with the company, and so I'm happy to be able to connect with you to have this conversation, especially around this time when people are actually thinking about how do I prepare a little better about the holidays? How do I deal with the stress? Let me just name, before you get the chance to introduce yourself to the public. We know that, for well over 15 years, you've been dealing in this industry, in this market. And like I said, you already, as a company and individually, has helped over $1 billion in debt has been negotiated for the benefit of helping people. But let me tell you some of the things that just having constant conversations with the average family, concerns about inflation, stock market, current wars that are going on right now, not just one, but a second one. They're popping up. Listen, simply going to the supermarket, the next presidential election that is coming along. But before we get any deeper in that, can you please, first of all, again, welcome officially. Can you take a couple of minutes so that people that don't know you, they get an idea? You can introduce yourself, my friend.
Thank you, Marvin. A pleasure to join you on this call. And first, thank you for thinking enough of us to invite us and to be able to have this opportunity to have this conversation. Obviously, it's very important. For me, it's a very exciting topic. It's very emotional. You've known me for a long time. I tell it how it is, and I truly am in a very, very fortunate position where we can help people with such sensitive matters. And obviously you've been in finance for a very long time, and we're all helping people just slightly with different elements of it. The challenges right now with what's going on and all the things that you kind of listed off, no one's helping the average American combat inflation and cost of living, right? No one's really talking about solutions. And as you said, there's a lot of other distractions going on right now, all the wars and everything else happening. But for those of you guys that are tuning in, we got some data for you guys. We got some information. Hopefully, if we don't have a solution for you, maybe we can get some ideas going. Maybe you can at least start, headed in the right direction. But yeah, I'm excited to be here, Marvin. Thank you for having me.
And we, like you said, our families know each other for a while right now. I have been able to witness personally, some of the solutions that were provided, and people that actually benefit from coming into contact with doing business with you and the organization that you represent. But married man, family man, beautiful child. We know each other at least at that level also. But I'm going to tell you, to my surprise, when my family and I decided to take steps into the area of financial services, the amount of confusion, the lack of clarity when it comes to making choices, the whole idea of the blind leading the blind or the blind following the blind, right? They say that the biggest stress that people will experience when it comes to money is not knowing what's coming around the corner, like not knowing what is the next thing that I'm going to be facing. So a lot of times when you have already solutions that happen to be in the market, but most people don't have access to the information. Most people don't know exactly some of the strategies that they can actually use. By the way, as I'm saying this, I also want to highlight the fact that there are certain solutions that would only apply to a certain group of people. You know, this is not a a one band-aid, one type of band-aid that fixes every suffering and every problem. You know what I mean? But there are certain things that will make a lot of sense. And I was saying to you that one of the reasons why I wanted us to have this conversation, because, you know, the building where I had my business, there's a lot of attorneys in here. And we have relationship with a lot of attorneys for many years. And to my surprise, one of the things that they've been saying to me is like, hey, listen, we are now moving a little more towards the bankruptcy side of the business, just because we see a lot more people looking for information. The reality is when you start to hear that kind of, commentary, and especially coming from this group of professionals saying, like some even attorneys that was not their side of the industry, they're saying, I'm going to have to look into it just because we have so many people saying, hey, I'm heavily indebted. What came out of, COVID, again, the way people never expected inflation numbers to get to the point that they got. People were joking around about the price of X and things like that. But the reality is, once you remove all the joking around and you start thinking about the average person going to the supermarket right now, that unfortunately move from the payroll capability to take care of their problems to now increasing the amount of credit card debt that they have, especially credit cards. When we see numbers at 26, 29, 31% of interest, right? There's nothing in the market that makes anybody 26, 29, 31% to be able to survive that, and saying, I have no other choice but to start using some credit cards just to make a run to the supermarket. A lot of people are not familiar with the idea that there's other options in the market, Armen. And again, part of it is lack of information. Unfortunately, there's not enough people having these conversations at home. As you know, at home is a very difficult topic of conversation to talk about money. It's a very stressful topic of conversation. As I met you and I was able to see the work that Mediated Debt Solutions was doing in the marketplace, I remember one of the clients that we had in my office was a tough guy to deal with, very skeptical about everything. And we had a conversation about the services that you provide. And I said, you know what, why don't you go through a process of interview with them so they can give you a little perspective. And he's the one that actually came back, like literally praising you and praising your process and praising the company by saying, I never met a group of people that were more methodical from the information. I know that you're going to share some information because I want to highlight that because I think it's part of an important process. Your process is welcoming, and your process is informational, and your process is really committed to providing a solution if there is the ability to provide one. Right. So let me hand it over to you, because I know that a lot of people come to you looking for different choices when it comes to how do I manage my debt, including that conversation of bankruptcy.
So that's obviously that's a lot of things to unpack, and we're going to try to keep it as simple as possible. But there's a couple things that we're definitely going to touch on that I think that get overlooked quite a bit, believe it or not. And it's a blind spot. So sometimes we assume just because someone has a college education or they're a professional that they're somehow exempt from that. Like, oh, he's a doctor. One has nothing to do with the other. Being a professional, being a good human being, whatever it is that you're good at, has nothing to do with how you budget your finances at home. And I think that's the biggest misconception that I had to overcome myself when I was helping people, is I would prejudge and I would say, well, they're successful. And then what I realized later on is that the people that were more successful, the business owners, they just owed more debt. The issue wasn't the level of success. The issue is that our own individual, whether it's misconception, whether it's temporary financial setbacks, whether they were induced by the economy, right? But bottom line is we have to get away from thinking, well, she's a nurse, therefore she doesn't need the help. No, she doesn't understand how credit card compound interest works and all these they don't know. And the same thing applies to our industry. We started to talk to a lot of professionals in finance and the credit space, and we just assume that, well, because they're in that space, they know how our industry works. And people don't realize really literally what our industry does. So I'm going to have some information here to kind of give everyone a little perspective of where this all started from. And there's some very good data that's been compiled by very credible sources that will take us up until 2020. Now, it's a little scary of what the numbers are going to look like. We're not going to need a chart to see what's going to happen in 21, 22, 23, 24. But that's going to be kind of like the starting point and where we want to draw a baseline. So let's just go ahead and bring up a couple slides here, just so we have some visual. There's a few different sources out there that claim that we just hit $1 trillion, and then, maybe we're at 1.1 trillion. There's a U.S., org, debt.org.com, usdebtclock.org.com, excuse me, that runs a live tally, and they're saying their Federal Reserve is the source. Obviously, there's other institutions, but point being is this: multiple sources have confirmed that we hit $1 trillion, right? That's a problem. That's a problem because we're not even discussing all the other verticals. We're not talking about housing. We're not talking about automobiles. We're not even mentioning the payday loans. We're not talking about student loans. We're just saying credit card debt. So here's what we do know. As of recently, the delinquency on credit card rates has gone up nationwide by 12%. Every couple points moves the needle. 12%. The reality is that everybody has brought on board more debt into their household. Simultaneously, what's happening? The rates are going up. The feds are raising the rates because they're saying we want to slow down inflation. Inflation hit 8%. I lost track, right? Somewhere in the eights. And then now, again, different conversation, right? Now they're pushing it down, but how are they pushing it down? By raising the rates. So we're at a record high credit card debt, which requires a payment every single month, a contribution. And as a result, immediately we're seeing the short-term damage is delinquency rates are up right away. Well, what does that mean? Well, delinquency rates are up. That means credit's being impacted. That means limits are being lowered. That means more credit is being impacted. That means now you can't go buy a car at 15%, even though that's already ridiculously high. Now you got to pay 25%. And then it's just a negative snowball of negative events, right? So the first thing that I think that we need to agree on is that there's a problem. Unfortunately, not enough people are talking about the solutions, which is what I love what you do and the company that the companies that we represent with PHP agency, of course, and Mediator Debt Solutions is we're actually getting into the households that no one's serving right now. No one's paying attention to them, to that market. So that's the first step, right? Now, as far as where did this industry start from? So I myself got involved at, a little bit 2009-ish. So right when the real estate market crashed last time around, 2009-ish, right? So after that, I got into this industry. Now, if you look at the charts here, and I understand some of the text might be a little small, but I'll kind of just highlight.
No, they look phenomenal. They look very well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for the confirmation. So on the left side, the chart, it says enrolled clients. This is going back to 2012, the good old days. Yeah. Okay, 2012, and then Dun Bradstreet, Don Brand and Associates, I'll get the name exactly. They're the ones that actually did the studies, and they ran them a couple of years back to back. The most recent one was just this one, and this is the data they've compiled. I am very curious to see what the numbers are going to look like over the next couple of years. Now, we know there's going to be obviously an increase in savings at some point during COVID, right? We've all seen it happen in real time.
Correct.
And then it shot back up, the debt amount. But look at what happens here. This is a chart of enrolled clients and the increase, right? So there was 1.6 million customers enrolled in a debt settlement program, right? With 11.7 million accounts and then 45.2 million in debt. Right, so that's a 2,500% increase, right? It grew by 2,500%. It grew by 2,500%. On 2012, you were looking at about 350 million. That's what this number represents here, right? And then obviously that number significantly went up. And then when you have the total enrolled debt by debt settlement, this first chart here, right here, this very first small blue box, 2012. That's 1.7 billion.
Yeah.
Right. And this is debt enrolled in billions. And then 2020, it's at 45 billion. Obviously, there's a lot of space in between. And there's also a lot of important years. I mean, right now, everything is skyrocketing. The demand is really going up.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Armen, I want to highlight the fact that 2020, which is where you're ending these numbers,
yeah,
the average price of, gas was, at least here in the state of Florida, where my home base happens to be, was less than $2. The average interest rate, was anywhere from 0 to the highest 2.9%. The unemployment rate was extremely low around that time, around that moment. And this is, again, we're talking about right before we go into the whole COVID scenario that is taking place. So, and the reason why I'm highlighting this is because the average impact of the average conversation with people, again, the average person that's just going to the supermarket. Again, I'm talking about the workforce, the person that is not necessarily paying that much attention to certain numbers or to certain information. They measure everything by the size of the bag they're carrying out of the supermarket, right? Yeah. And they can literally say, man, around those days, I was able to come out with a bigger bag. You know what I mean? I was doing a little better. And so we take that incredible drastic expansion of that incredible growth of that. And if you take the last 3 years, we can pretty much assume that this number is going to look even once this is redone again, is going to look probably 1,000 times worse. Is that a safe assessment?
So absolutely, our economy got there with our habits, without the help of COVID. We got there without any of that.
Wow, I appreciate you saying that. What a statement.
Couple that with, I don't know how many trillion they printed. We jump started spending and did all this housing market record. Everything was records. Everybody was a top salesman of the year. It was records everywhere. Okay, and now where's it all? And now where are we? Now the markets are stagnant. They're all scared. Really, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty because they don't know what's going to happen. But the biggest thing that I want everybody to take away from this chart is 21, 22, 23 are going to crush these numbers. And what does that mean? And I want to show, if it's okay, Marvin, I'd like to go to the next slide to give everybody, we know where the industry, this is what we do. We're enrolling people. We're getting people enrolled to help them get relief. That's what these numbers are representing, right? Now, what happens when a client is out there, like we're talking about trillions of dollars? Let's just take one person. Let's just take one person that's got $30,000 worth of debt. So initially, before the interest rate hikes, you were probably looking at about a $900 monthly minimum payment on $30,000 in credit card debt. Today, it's more. I didn't adjust that on purpose. Because today, that same customer, I promise you, is not paying $900 a month. They're probably paying double that. But
and that is based on interest rate being higher.
Yes.
What? Okay.
Yes. So like if you had an interest rate that was at 24.99%, it's at 32% now. You didn't have to do anything for that to happen. It just happened. If you had an interest rate on a credit card for 10.99%, right now it's like 19.99%, right? So when that happens, your minimum payment goes up. Banks are allowed to charge you all these other fees, part of the minimum payment. And the challenge with this equation, you take this and you extrapolate this to $1 trillion, no one's getting out of debt. That's the problem. A bunch of money being exchanged from a household that worked really hard to earn that income, and now they're paying a bunch of interest on top of interest. And for most folks, they end up on the doorsteps of bankruptcy because they don't know of any other options, which is something that we're going to touch on today. But what happens when, like, what's the difference, Armen? You know, why did the debt settlement companies enroll all these people, and that number of people enrolled has been significantly, you know, increasing, especially in the last couple of years? Growth we're looking at of almost 3,000%. Well, what's going on is we're giving people an opportunity to start from scratch, right? Without being bankrupt, without giving up their assets, by actually renegotiating the debt. In this very simple example, that same person that owes 30,000, you know, immediately we're putting cash flow back in their budget. Instead of spending 1,000 a month or 1,200 a month or 1,500 a month, that family can now pay 500 and get out of debt in a short amount of time. That's not a terrible plan. That's better than paying interest indefinitely, or worse, right? The economy isn't going to get better. Every major economist is saying it's going to get a lot worse, which is why our demand is naturally going up, because people are now motivated by fear. They're saying, okay, I got to move it. I got to put something in place. So the person that was comfortable sitting on the fence, now they're saying, okay, I can't afford to sit back anymore. Too much risk.
And for the average, for the benefit of everybody that's looking at this, you know what I mean, just the same way that I'm looking at it right now, let me make sure that I'm reading this correctly. So it's $900 monthly payment. After 5 years, I made $54,000 in payments, but I'm still indebted. And
Exactly.
after going through a debt settlement process with your company, the same $30,000 with a $508 monthly payment, after 3 years, the total cost is $18,288, but I'm totally debt free. Am I reading this correctly?
Yes. Yes. The settlement percentages are estimates, of course, because they're going to vary customer by customer, creditor by creditor. But yes, that is the example.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody's clear about the significance between one and the other, especially that one component of being 100% debt free, opposed to, you know what I mean? Like the people that will continue to make payments and they still indebted pretty much to the same principal amount that is what created the problem to begin with.
Exactly. And here's the challenge. Like, I think we're too nice sometimes. The person that we consult with that needs the service like oxygen, that person that decides maybe not to take advantage of it or maybe do nothing, this example is nice. That person is probably going to increase their debt after 5 years of payments. So like when I say we're showing conservative numbers, I really mean it. The reality is, and I've seen this happen numerous times, we talk to a client, a year later we reconvene, and a year later, after paying on all their debt that they were going to pay off on their own, they made all their payments, and now instead of owing 30,000, now they owe 45,000. So they went backwards, right? And it's not their fault. It's more challenging to do it today than it was, 8 years ago, because of the way that the interest rates are affecting their minimum payments, and the cost of living affecting. So everything is pulling money out of your budget. This does a couple things. It helps you combat inflation today. We don't have to wait 6 years. It helps you combat inflation today. It helps you combat interest rate hikes today. It helps your family start saving money during the most difficult economic times. Like, who can do that? How can you save money? Well, I just showed you a way to save money every month. Not a lot, but if you maintain your spending habits, in a year, you'll have $4,000 cash. Put it in an envelope, put it in insurance. Like, this is a way, right? So obviously you can see I'm very passionate about doing something. Quite frankly, I tell people sometimes in my trainings that go do something with somebody. It doesn't have to be with me. Just do something. Just don't do nothing, right? That's too expensive.
Correct.
Client benefits are pretty straightforward. You have no idea what kind of stress is lifted off of people's shoulders when they go from having to pay 15 people, just one person now. There's so much clarity there for them to focus on the things that matter, maybe even like, you know, focusing on actually raising their children. I know it sounds silly, but like you said, finances are very stressful, very stressful. Debt will literally kill you, right? It will stress you out and it will literally kill you. The whole thing is private. You know, our company, look, I could list a really long list of how we do things slightly better. What I can tell you is this: we do have data from the industry that shows a significant better result per customer on average than what the rest of the industry does. Does that mean we're the best ones? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's a lot of other great companies out there. What I'm saying is that our results have been consistently performing better, and we have data to support that compared to other people in our space. And I know that one of the things you touched on was bankruptcy. Correct. Right. So usually we look at a couple different options out there and how they all fit together. But really, I think it's important for people to know what their options are. You know, you said something that's key. You said it's not for everybody. It applies to all areas, right? For the person that doesn't do debt consolidation or doesn't do counseling or doesn't do bankruptcy or doesn't do debt settlement, what if they just chose to pay off their debt on their own? It's still acceptable, right? It's still acceptable. It's a rare instance, right? So let's talk a little bit more about bankruptcy, Marvin, and maybe you can kind of help.
I do have a question before we jump into that. The debt consolidation and the debt settlement. Okay, for the benefit of everybody that, you know, sounds exactly the same. Can you help us understand a little bit what is the difference between one and the other?
So debt consolidation literally means I apply for a debt consolidation loan. I tell a lender and I say, look, I owe $5,000 to Bank of America, $5,000 to Wells Fargo, and $5,000 to Chase. I'd like a loan for $15,000, and my average interest rate hopefully is going to be lower with the consolidation loan. So that's the actual act of debt consolidation. This is what every human being on planet Earth that's alive that's ever wanted to get out of debt wants. But the percentage of people that actually are eligible, and assuming that they're eligible with today's interest rates, it might still not make sense. Even if the bank said, look, we know you're overextended and you owe all this money to all these banks, we're willing to take on all the risk. No one's going to do that. Now, what they do is they'll give you a third of the amount you need. They'll give you $5,000, and then how do you pick and choose? Well, you split it up, and guess what's going to happen in 6 months? Now you get back, rack up the other 3 credit cards back to $5K each, and now you got a $5K loan on top. Now you're 20 grand in debt. You didn't consolidate anything.
Correct.
Right? Debt settlement is literally where we go back to that creditor that you owe and we say no more interest, so you're going to pay 0 interest. I don't care what the inflation or the federal rate is. We're going to negotiate down 0, and we're going to negotiate that down for even below what the balance is, including all fees, including our performance fee, right? So the difference is, one is pro customer, and it's going to help you get out of debt the cheapest way possible. There is no cheaper way to get out of debt, with exception of bankruptcy Chapter 7. And if you qualify for that, you got bigger challenges in life, right? Like,
correct.
It's not a comparison.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, but right now, going into, is it safe to say then that, you know, your program it's a step prior to getting to the point of bankruptcy? For a lot of people, that is a valuable option before getting to that point. Would you say that there's a decent way to actually see it as a perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, Marvin. I think that a different way to describe us would be an alternative to bankruptcy, right? Sure. And in my professional opinion, for someone that reached the end of the rope, bankruptcy is the last resort. That means you tried the counseling route, you tried the settlement route, and none of those are feasible options for you and for your family. Then you go the bankruptcy route. And those are extremes, right? Most people, they can avoid bankruptcy. Now, and then some unique situations, if it's a ridiculous amount of debt or unmanageable amount of debt, or if they're already in active litigation or garnishments of some sort, so you got to restructure. You have no choice. You need to get that protection from bankruptcy. But it doesn't mean it was the best choice, right? It could have been prevented and avoided. And most people don't see the significance in trying to prevent it because, again, their financial literacy, they don't understand how that's going to impact them long term, right? Or they're so stressed out where they don't even care.
I didn't get a chance to have enough conversations
No.
just to get some options on the table, just to before making that final choice. Because obviously, when it comes to the time factor, like one solution has to avoid to be a faster solution in terms of coming out of the overall problem than the next one. Because bankruptcy, when it comes to, especially when it comes to credit, right, will follow you. I think that today is it's almost like 8 years before anybody is able to be looked at in a different perspective, and so it takes a long time to get. I mean, the simple fact that it's already in your credit is it's already a big red flag for any creditor. You know what I mean? So, in addition to that, there is something that you were showing us right now that to me is extremely important: the cash flow component. Right? I mean, just looking at that example that you were showing before, when you're saying somebody's 900, 508, and immediately going, wow, that's $492 that somebody's getting the chance to hold on to. What can you do with that additional money right now? How will that help you when it comes to, expenses and in covering basic things at home? And again, just going back to the conversation of the supermarket, right? Would it help you to have the flexibility to have some additional money being available in your bank account? Because at the end of the day, Armen, sometimes it's not just the size of the debt. It's when somebody loses that cash flow, right? I don't have the ability. The whole thing is choking me to the point that not enough money is flowing anymore. It doesn't get to stay with me. So that's a real significant aspect of the solution that you provide. This is, I mean, let's face it. Most people, unfortunately, went through life or are going through life. Remember, we have different people at different stages, right? You have, unfortunately, some young people right now that they still don't know the basics about how to create a budget, how to have that conversation, just the basic information. And then there's the other component. You said it very well, which is, a lot of these things are self-inflicted wounds. You know what I mean? It's lack of discipline. They didn't know, or we didn't learn, or we didn't have good habits that had been developed all along the process. So we definitely need a little more discipline. The problem is that, most people right now are extremely confused. This is no longer lack of information. This is maybe in some cases we have too much information and people don't know where to go. So the average amount of debt that you're seeing right now, is that a safe number to say that you're seeing people with an average 30,000, 20,000, 40,000? Where is everybody? Because for us, having conversations with people, we're seeing that number actually increasing also, which again is the reason why a lot of the attorneys that we were having conversations with were saying, hey, this number is just getting bigger. And that's the reason why now people is still thinking in terms of bankruptcy, because they don't know that it's not the number that should trigger the conversation of looking for the solution. But if you do see the number going up, it is obviously a sign that you need to be looking for help, that you need to be having a conversation with somebody. What is the average dollar amount that you see with people on terms, just as an average, that what you will say that?
So the average has been floating around between 24 to 30,000, right? And it's been slowly going up. But what I can tell you, Marvin, to be more exact on, what increase in numbers are we seeing per customer, we're seeing a lot more business owners. We're seeing a lot more business owners, and the correlation is very clear. Business owners are carrying significantly more debt. these conversations are starting at 90,000, 95,000, 165,000. And that's across the board. And those numbers are staggering because these people are paying on this much debt, credit card debt, and they're breaking themselves in half, paying $4 or $5 grand a month in 60,000 a year because they don't know of any other options, or there is a misinformation and they think one thing is something or it's not something else. And, you know, there's a big confusion about credit, right? Like, and everything that you listed about what's been going on with our economic climate, well, guess what? Banks are tightening as well. They're pulling credit off the table anyways. They're not trying to give more credit. If you look at the charts, after 2009, 2010, you know, that recession or whatever we want to call it, that economic challenge that we all went through, delinquency rates came down. Credit limits went up. You know, it's just natural progression. Right now, it's the opposite of that. And it's worse than it was before. Before, it was the real estate market that started the domino effect and the banks started to fail. And then it kind of affected everything else. Now it's the whole world, unemployment and like cost inflation, the gas prices. I mean, when I go grocery shopping, I'm making changes in my life. I have to live differently now. I have different priorities. I have a wife, I have a child, I have to invest. So I'm not, you know, if I have to choose, I'm going to pay less on the liabilities and I'm going to find ways to create some savings, right? Like, you have to pay attention. And, you know, the worst part about all this is that I don't know what the exact data point is, but it says something like 70% of people don't have a budget. Like, they don't have a budget. They kind of know how much they pay for their cell phone bill. They kind of know how much they spend on groceries. And they just stop spending it when they run out of money, or they use the credit cards. It's crazy.
Yeah, incredible. It's like really not having any guiding principles when it comes to finances. You know what I mean? So you don't know what you're aiming for. You don't know exactly what should be the main targets. You don't know exactly what even the risk factors. You know what I mean? And you know, I was just having a recent conversation with somebody, small business owner. And we were talking about the cash flow. There was, again, having this conversation about cash flow. And one of the statements that I have no choice but to make to the person was like, listen, you right now, you have no room for any mistakes. Like, and there's only two ways to go about it. Either you spend less money or you got to find a way to make more money. And so I appreciate you talking about adjustments. Listen, the fact of the matter is, we're going to see how this quarter is going to end, the last quarter, but we're looking at, based on information that we see in every news outlet is talking about bankruptcy, not just bankruptcy, forget about foreclosures, actually starting to pop up again. Car repos, you know what I mean, that are taking place. Those numbers are going through the roof. If that's actually happening, that means that credit cards, you know, that before somebody loses a car or before somebody stops making payments on a house, you know, they will definitely start making payments on their credit cards. And so it's just a natural what comes first type of conversation. And so, you know, for people that they don't know, and again, if they didn't get a chance to make a budget, if they're still trying to understand how to become a little more disciplined, before we start closing out this conversation, there's a couple of things that I wanted to ask you. One of them, is there a book out there that you recommend for people that would be helpful for them to understand how to get a handle of finances and things like that?
Oh man, there's definitely a lot of books between you and I.
I know. I'm looking at
one of my favorites about finance is Tony Robbins, Total Money. Well, what is it? I don't want to confuse it with another book.
I got one from here.
Tony Robbins. No, that's not the one.
Money Master the Game, is that?
Yes.
Money Master the Game. There you go.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that one because it has a lot of practical things on there. But honestly, if your budget is in the red, there's a very simple thing that you got to do. You got to go, if you're single, if you're married, whatever the circumstance is, So do it either by yourself or with somebody that you care with together, but you got to figure out what you could live without first. So what can I eliminate from my budget? And then you got to figure out how to spend less money on food, how to spend less. You have to, if you are in that situation. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's going to get worse. And when it gets worse and when the pain level goes up, you're going to act in a very frantic situation. And when we're at that stage emotionally, now we start making bad decisions. And now you're going to make a decision that you might regret for the next 8 years. So you know, I mean, look, I was forced, you know, there's certain things that I won't pay for, like a Spotify account. Why am I going to spend $8 a month? I got a free one. It works just fine. And I like the commercials. I don't have TV at home, so I watch the commercials. Right? That's how I stay connected with the world. I know what's going on. So there's certain things that I'm not okay with. And then there's other things that, you know, I pay a lot of money on cars. And guess what? That's changing. Right? Sure. I'm done. I'm gonna increase my savings by 50% by eliminating one of those pieces. Why? Because it makes sense. It's a hybrid environment now. I'm not in the office every single day. You know, my priorities are different. We have, is it safe? Yes. We have a car for the baby? Yes. That part is taken care of, no problem. The rest is a luxury and necessity that I don't need right now. Right? So in 3 years from now, I want to have more savings to be in a better position to take advantage of the opportunities in the market. Well, how am I going to get there? I got to start planning now, not 3 years from now. So I would start there, right? Just figure out what can I cross out of my budget.
Yeah, you know, in all fairness, you know what I mean, because we've been part of this conversation. We have the opportunity to talk about savings. We have the opportunity to talk about investments. We have the opportunity to so it's the whole idea that if I spend a lot of time in a restaurant, eventually I'll probably learn to cook something, right? Yeah. So we have the benefit of understanding certain concepts. You know, to my surprise, because as you know, I'm not trying to sound like Julio Iglesias on purpose. I came from another place. The purpose of this channel is to have a little bit of a conversation about, you know, we call it the Daily Crossing for multiple reasons. You know what I mean? The Daily Crossing is not only for the amount of immigrants that come to this country that in some cases have even a greater perspective about what the American dream is all about. They are deeply surprised about how very little people know about the financial structure of the country. I'm talking about the people that were born in the country, right? That and have very little understanding, you know, the average person has. Then you look at the educational system and you go, man, there's a lot of things that we're not talking as the process of, you know, children going through school and coming out of it, going into real life, just better prepare. So now you go into real life, you don't know how to purchase a car, you don't know how to use credit cards effectively, you don't know how to manage debt correctly, you don't know how to purchase a home, you don't even know what the right rate is. And so a lot of real life things that people are supposed to be doing, they don't know. And so when they get to this point, they also don't even know where to go to. So the purpose of this conversation, and I'm deeply grateful that you agreed to have the conversation, because when we're talking about, you know, capitalism and an American dream, a lot of people like to always put a negative connotation when it comes to capitalism, and saying, well, you know, it's the mismanagement and the high highs and the low lows. And a lot of us sometimes don't want to take responsibility for our own actions. B, don't want to take the time to look for choices. For me, this conversation is just an invitation to everyone that's thinking along those lines, that actually looking at those numbers getting higher, bigger, to start looking for some choices. You know, I mean, I'm going to do something that I normally don't do in any of my videos, which is to actually provide even my own cell phone number, so that anybody wants to get additional information about what your process happens to be, so that we know how to channel. Like I said, my family, the business that we run with PHP agency is also has the ability to be connected to your process. So we want to, first and foremost, we want to confirm to people that we've seen specific results about the work that you and your company are doing. There is nothing less than just extremely amazing, phenomenal to see how much of a practical, immediate help you have been able to provide to other people. And I do hope that everybody will consider mediator debt solutions will consider your company and your relationship as at least a point of conversation. So my cell phone number being 407-252-0178. And we're actually going to put it in a way that people can actually take it down and connect it to the process. We'll put some of your information. Any final recommendations that you want to give us before we close this conversation, Armen?
Just one thought. First, thank you for that, Marvin. I appreciate you and your time as well. We don't have to sell our service. Let me explain what I mean. What we're actually selling is the process of just getting the consultation and getting the information, literally, right? So you're not being forced to buy anything in that sense. And the reality is that if you already have the debt, the selling has already been done, the buying has already been done. Now you just got to look at your options, and that's how we handle our referrals, even with our partnerships. So absolutely, if anybody reaches out, I would love for you to refer them to us through your channel.
And for the purpose of clarity, because I want to make sure that everybody understands what you're saying, you are having a conversation with people and you're not charging anybody up front. You're just going to see if there's a solution that can be provided, and that also is something that doesn't even come out of their package, essentially.
That is correct. That is correct. The consultation is absolutely free, and even if they qualify and they like what they hear and they want to become a client, we're 100% performance-based, which means that the only way we'll ever make money is if we're actually doing our job and helping you save money. It's an unmatched level of accountability from a company towards the commitment to consumer. But yeah, that's it. You're looking at options, or we're not going to twist your hand. And if you're not going to look at options with us, look at your options with somebody, right? That's really what the point of this conversation was.
Do something essentially is, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Listen, man, I appreciate it very much. Like, is the whole idea that I love your business model for one simple reason. You know what I mean? It's like you're literally saying, in order for me to make money, I got to do something for someone. And if I don't have the ability to provide any real solution, if I don't have the ability to provide something of enough value for anybody else, we are not collecting anything from anyone. I think that everybody's got to take that in one end very seriously. But second of all, at a very personal level, I can't thank you enough for the amount of information that you just provided right now. We're going to make sure that we move this around through our channels internally, and also we'll send you a copy of this video so that you have it available to in your end. Listen, to your company, like I said, from friend to friend, from company to company, we definitely, like I said, we've been a witness to the many good things that you have done. We are grateful for that. We consider you a friend, but also we consider you a valuable partnership precisely because of the things that we've seen you and the company doing. So we're extremely grateful for that. I can't thank you enough also for your time, the generosity of your time, and for this conversation. So until we get to you again, my brother, thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. See you.
Easy.